sometimes when working with younger singers that have less experience, even if they have a really good intuition about them, about what they want, if they really have an identity and they're successfully carving away at it. Bass guitar is usually overlooked, not always. And the changes that they're looking for, that the singer might want, is actually from the bass guitarist, but because it's the sort of the instrument that's the easiest to overlook in the whole, in the scheme of a band, I'll find that the singer will look to the guitar player, the piano player for the changes, for trying to find what they want. And I mean, I've had plenty of times on sessions where, usually on sessions, if there's a session leader, a producer, there's the artist, and all these people are talking on the cue system, and so the less people that talk, the better. There's plenty of times where I'll hear the singer say something, I know what they mean, or I get the general idea of what they mean, but I don't say, oh, let me change this on the bass guitar. I might say, hey, let's just play it again. Or I might not say anything if somebody's saying, okay, well, let's just take the second verse and, chorus, and we'll see what, if this helps. I'll change what I'm doing. No one will have any idea that I've changed what I'm doing, except maybe the engineer. That might be the person that actually catches on to what's happening. And then, the singer will say, oh, great, that's more like what I want, but with no idea of what's actually changed. They just know that the feeling they have is more like what they wanted. With a young singer, young band, young bass player, one of the things to keep in mind, a way to just alleviate problems right off the bat, is if you're playing a live show, if you're in a rehearsal space, don't flood the space with low-end frequencies, because that's the first thing that will tweak a singer. It really makes it difficult. The low frequencies make it difficult for, when low frequencies start bouncing off of reflective surfaces and becoming slightly sharp or flat, what we call a rub, where frequencies are hitting each other and all of a sudden you have something that's not a note. It's just sort of noise. That's the first thing that's going to happen, that's going to make a singer lose their tonal center. And so I've played plenty of shows with well-known artists where I don't even have an amp on the stage. I just run direct in, or on ears, or I have a wedge in front of me that's pointing at me, and the singer can hear whatever amount of bass that they want in a more controlled environment. So if you're a band, if your singer's having trouble and you can't get to the bottom of what it is, just turn your bass amp down, and that's going to help a lot. Turn the low end down on the bass, maybe boost a little bit of the mid-range so that your notes can be heard and discerned, but not necessarily creating a lot of low frequency noise. So if you're a singer and you know that something is wrong, you can't find your tonal center, and you're trying to identify what it is. Say you're in a rehearsal space with your band, you're in a live setting, and it keeps happening night after night. The very first thing that you can do that's really easy to do is go to the bass player and experiment with this, ask them to turn down the lowest frequencies, but in order to hear the note, maybe boost the mid-range a little bit so that the note can be heard, the instrument can be heard, but it doesn't need to rattle the floor. It just needs to marry to the kick drum and sit within the within its own place within the band. If you can successfully do that, then there's a good chance that's going to solve the problem. If there's an additional problem, then you're going to have the first one out of the way. And in my experience, that's typically the starting place. If I were to give direction to somebody who's going to hire musicians, hire a bass player to work with, a good starting place is just having a good recording of the song. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be within the realm in terms of the feel, and a performance that is good enough to be able to hear the lyrics and what the chord structure is. Outside of that, you know, it depends on the circumstance. Is this something where you're trying to develop the song together and flush it out and find out what it is? Or is this a song maybe that a singer's been, an original piece that the singer's been singing for 30 years, and they have a way that they like it, although they don't expect each musician that they hire to play what's on the recordings verbatim. Start with the recordings, play them verbatim. The way this works is that by the end of a tour, nobody on stage is really cognizant of how much the songs have changed, but they become your own over time. The thing I would say to stay away from is, unless you're asked to do so, don't try and reinvent a song on the first day of rehearsal. Again, unless that's what's asked of you, and then that's pretty fun. In terms of trying to communicate more detail, the singer communicating more detail to the bass player, to the band, my personal preference is that that come in the form of a chart. Put on the chart what you want. You know, if it's going to be a shuffle, you don't have to write out the swing of the shuffle, but you might write out a few passing examples of the types of passing notes that you want. You might write out the chord inversions. If the band is playing a 4-chord, but you want the 6 to be the bass note, write out a chart where the band knows that in advance, so that you don't spend, once the band is together, that's precious time. You don't have to deal with elemental, you know, such elementary factors like right off the bat while everybody's together. Everybody can have an idea of what that is before the band comes together. So your first time playing through a song might be pretty together.